We just finished a study of the 12 steps, and I wanted to go into a study on mental health issues in relation to complex trauma and addiction and recovery. And why I want to do that is because what I have seen over the last 14 years that I've been involved in addiction counseling is that to really help people in addiction, you have to do really three things for them that they have to look at. So number one, they have to look at addiction and what it does in the brain, what it does in the body, the central nervous system. And that's a very important piece. And most treatment centers will talk about that. Then what I have focused much of my work on has been the complex trauma, the underlying childhood piece where 97% of addicts grew up in environments where they didn't feel safe. And so that's the second piece, but there's a third piece, and that's the mental health component. Now, when I started at Tamarack 14 years ago, all the literature at that point in time said that 60% of addicts had mental health issues. And so I went with that, but I have kind of watched over the years and in the whole study of complex trauma, where I have come now in my thinking and where the research is starting to say is that 90% of addicts have mental health issues. And I would agree with that 100%. And for most of those who are in addiction, the two common mental health issues are depression and anxiety issues. And anxiety issues focuses around ADHD, PTSD, general anxiety disorder, anxiety attacks, panic attacks. All those are under the umbrella of anxiety issues within the mental health field. And so that is why it is such an important topic for people to talk about. I wanted tonight just kind of give you an overview of it so you understand where we're going to be coming from, and then we're going to dig next week into some of the mental health issues that come out of complex trauma. But let me give you another reason why I want to talk about this. As I have dealt with addicts over the last number of years, what I have found is there's a variety of different feelings amongst addicts regarding having a mental health issue. Sadly, it's disappearing, but a stigma still exists in many places about having a mental health issue. You can find it in the general community. You can still find it in some 12-step groups amongst old-timers where there's a stigma. You can still find it in some church environments where there's a stigma. And so what happens with many addicts is this. You already have a stigma that you're an addict. And then for many addicts, they got a stigma that they've worked in the sex trade or they've been in prison. And now they got to wear another sign on their forehead saying, I have a mental health issue as well. Put me in the big loser category. Because I just got one thing after another wrong with me. And so to admit you got an addiction is bad enough. But then to admit you got a mental health issue on top of that is really hard. Especially if people still look at you as if you're crazy. And so that causes a lot of people to have problems. Part of what I have found comes out of that is many people don't want to take pills for mental health issues. That seems to somehow confirm to themselves that they got a problem. And that they are maybe a little bit crazy. And so the stigma, they've actually believed some of it. And so they feel that to take a pill proves that they got an extra problem. So don't take pills and just live with the problem. That doesn't make sense to me on one level, but on another level, I get it. And then what comes out of that is they justify not taking pills by saying the mental health world, psychiatrists, doctors prescribe pills like candy. And there's an element of truth to that, sadly. But that is no reason to justify you not taking necessary medication. But it is an issue that we deal with, is that a doctor will just write you a prescription at a heartbeat. And that is, there's a sad element to that. Some people find they take pills, and lo and behold, they feel better. And where they go in their mind is, oh, I guess I don't need to take pills anymore because I'm feeling good. Without recognizing the reason they're feeling good is because they took the pills. And if they stop taking the pills, they won't feel good anymore. But it takes them a while to figure that out. And so that can happen, and that is a dangerous thing for many people. Other people, I think, have struggled with, they have used pills as part of, or they've abused pills. And it's sad to me that one of the fastest addictions right now, the fastest growing addictions, is pill abuse. Benzos, opiates, antipsychotics, all of those things have been abused by many, many people. And so we, as professionals within the addiction treatment world, realize that more and more people that we deal with are pill abusers. And so that is a big problem. And so many people don't want to take pills because they're afraid they'll start to abuse it again. And so you need to be honest about that if you're working with somebody, but that isn't necessarily a good enough reason not to take prescribed medication. The other thing that I have found with many addicts is that over the years, they have been their own pharmacists and their own psychiatrists. And they have used drugs and alcohol and pills and mixed them all into this concoction that they have given themselves to try to control their own mental health issues. And what many have found is it might have seemed to have helped for a little bit, but the addiction always takes over and makes things worse in the end. And so there's just a lot of issues combined in this whole mental health topic. So I hope I can help you think some of this stuff through. What I want to do in giving you a big picture tonight is to give you some of the latest research. I had somebody talk to me today, and they went to a psychiatrist, and they asked them about what they thought about complex trauma. And what they realized in listening to the psychiatrist was that it is still a new concept for many people, and many psychiatrists still don't even understand it well. And so what we teach you here is often more than a psychiatrist knows. But if you do some careful digging into the latest research within the field of psychiatry and look at the DSM, which is the manual that they use, what is coming out of the research now around complex trauma is that many of these psychological disorders are now being connected to complex trauma. And so what they're saying is that a result of a child growing up in abuse or neglect or abandonment is that disorders, personality disorders, come out of that as the brain's way of coping. And so what is being recognized, and I put them on the screen, is that many types of depression actually come out of complex trauma. Dr. Gabor Mate out of Vancouver, who's done tremendous help in the whole field of addiction, is the first doctor that said he believed ADHD came out of complex trauma. And that at first was resisted, but more and more are coming to believe and agree with Dr. Gabor Mate that children with ADHD have it because there's complex trauma, That's why they can't focus. So that came out of that stuff. A big one, anxiety disorders, and we talked about that. The newest thing, the big rage with children now, is to describe them with ODD, or oppositional defiance disorder, which simply means they don't like taking orders from you. They're defiant. And what they realize is there's a certain type of defiance in children that goes beyond what would be normal in a child, and it comes out of complex trauma. And I have seen it myself on many, many occasions. So there's conduct disorder, there is reactive attachment disorder, psychotic disorders, and then borderline personality disorder. Most psychiatrists used to say there's no hope for borderline personality. And when I started working in addiction, I found out that over half the people I work with had borderline personality disorder. Many of them undiagnosed, but I could see it. And I go, wow, if there's no hope for them, I'm in a bad profession. But then they began to realize borderline personality comes out of a person who's been abandoned. Complex trauma, severe. And that leads to borderline personality. And narcissistic personality, about a third of the people I work with have narcissistic personality disorder, and that comes out of complex trauma. So, and I want to show you that and help you understand why that's the case. And therefore, the way to deal with those things is to deal with your complex trauma. And it is hard work, but it is possible. And so for the first time, since this research has been coming out, there's more of a feeling of hope for people with personality disorders. And I want to explain it in just a few more minutes in greater detail. So let me take that a little bit further. As we teach on complex trauma, we look at the fact that it affects a child intellectually, emotionally, relationally, and coping-wise, or impulse control. And you're going to see that when you come to personality disorders or many mental health issues. There's an intellectual component, there's an emotional component, there's a relational component, and there's an impulse control component. So all of that, again, comes out of complex trauma, but it shows up in your mental health issues. And so when I talk mental health, I'm not just talking your emotions or your mood. I am talking your intellect, your emotions, your relationships, and your coping skills. All of them are part of mental health issues. And if we just focus on the mood, we will never help you enough. Now, sadly, and I've been told this by a psychiatrist, I know personally that the whole field of psychiatry today doesn't want to work on the relationship and the coping skills. It's much easier to give you a pill to help your mood. And that is sad to me because it's only working on one component of the four pieces. And so to me, it's an inadequate solution. And many of you know that from your own experience. Okay, here's now where you got to put your thinking caps on. And I'm going to show you a diagram in just a minute, okay? I want you to think of an arrow that goes up. So what we know about complex trauma is that there's a spectrum of complex trauma from very mild to very severe complex trauma. As the complex trauma gets more severe, what happens inside the person is the brain has to react in more severe coping ways. And those more severe coping ways become mental health issues. And I'm going to lay that all out for you. So, as the complex trauma gets more severe, it has a greater effect on your emotions, it has a greater effect on your thinking, it has a greater effect on your coping, and a greater effect on your relationships. It affects all of them in greater unhealthy ways. Okay, I'm going to show you this graph now. So on the left, you see complex trauma, mild at the bottom, severe at the top. Okay? Go over one line and it says shame. So what happens when a child is abused and neglected and abandoned? They draw conclusions about themselves. And the conclusion they draw about themselves is the reason I'm being abused, the reason I'm neglected and abandoned is because I have no value. I am not lovable. And that is called shame. It's the core belief about yourself. And so as that complex trauma gets more severe, so the abuse gets more severe, it's not just verbal or emotional, it's physical, severe physical, it is severe sexual, it is abandonment, where you're dumped off with CFS, etc. The child gets a deeper and deeper or more severe message of shame. And that shame message, as it gets more severe, gets more painful. Who wants to live with the painful realization that you basically are a piece of shit, that's why you've been abandoned? That is one of the most painful things to face. So what then happens with that intense shame and intense pain is you jump to the next line, anger. So as trauma goes up, shame goes up, and guess what else goes up? Anger. And so you get greater and greater anger boiling away under the surface, which erupts at times in psychoballistic stuff. So the more severe, the more anger. What else gets more severe as the complex trauma goes up and the shame goes up? The depression goes up. Who wants to live with the realization that I am not valuable or lovable? That is just depressing. And you can tell yourself lots of things, but there is a depression underneath that you're constantly running from. And then anxiety goes up. Because if I've been abandoned, and if you're abused and neglected, it feels like abandonment. And the greater the abuse, the more it feels like abandonment. Then you're basically saying it's little old me against a great big bad world where I can't trust anybody. I'm just anxious all the time. I don't know if I got the resources for this. I'm afraid of any change. I'm afraid of any unknown. Everything is scary to me, and anxiety goes up the greater the trauma. So you're following that. Okay. Now I'm going to take you to your brain. Because what happens now in your brain is it has to find ways of coping with that severe shame. And so if the shame is super severe because of super complex trauma, the brain does not want to face that fact. It can't live with the fact that it feels absolutely worthless. So it starts creating distortions and ways of coping in the brain to enable you to survive and live with yourself. So what I have done on that final line on the right side is show you that as complex trauma gets more severe, you get more severe personality disorders. So at the very bottom, everybody with complex trauma has some depression and some anxiety. That goes up to more severe, and you have been abandoned. And you fear now, your greatest fear is that anybody who gets to know you will abandon you. So what happens? You meet somebody, you fall in love, and you say, finally, I have found somebody to love me. Not just a minute. Shame kicks in and says, don't let them get to know you too well. Because the minute they get to know you, they will abandon you. After all, everybody else has. And so you can be the sweetest, nicest, most mature-looking person, and then your partner is 10 minutes late from work. And what does he walk through the door to find 10 minutes later? You having a total meltdown. Why? Because your greatest fear was just triggered. And that's borderline personality. And can he reason with you when you're having a meltdown? No. Because you just can't hear reason. You've gone to worst case scenario. You're mad and ready to kill anybody that gets within 2 feet of you. But you had a meltdown. You go out and tell that all the people you work with and say, no, not that person. They're the sweetest, nicest, most mature person in the world. They seem so stable. You must have got the wrong person. And you go, well, you really don't know that. So here's what I want you to see. As the disorders get up, more severe, people who just see you in regular life will never see them unless they know what they're looking for. Because you can look totally normal. Guess what triggers those deepest things? Intimate relationships. And so that is where the most severe disorders are triggered, because the deepest wounds came from the most intimate relationships. That's what made the complex trauma so severe. Then above borderline personality, narcissistic. And I'm not going to go into detail, but a narcissist basically hate themselves, but they act like they love themselves more than anybody else in the world. And they think everybody loves them. So if you're a female and you walk in and there's a guy you've never seen in your life before and you don't know that he's a narcissist, and you walk by him and you say hi, guess what just goes on in that narcissist's brain? She's in love with me. We're going to be married within 2 weeks. That's the narcissist. So here's what I want you to understand. It looks like they have no shame. It looks like they have great self-image. The reality is their shame is so bad, their brain has had to block that. And it is said the only way I can stay alive is to make myself think I'm better than everybody else. That's narcissistic personality disorder. Now you go more severe. And what happens in more severe is dissociative identity disorder, where a person dissociates and splits. Used to be called multiple personality. Now, I want you to understand something, and we're going to spend a whole night on it, and I'll just give you this. What they are now beginning to understand is ADHD is a mild form of dissociative identity. Because what is happening as a child is sitting at school and they can't focus. Is they want to disconnect from reality. And they have to keep bringing themselves back. Because things at home are making them want to disassociate. And so it's a mild form. But then what happens as the trauma gets more severe is you begin to dissociate. You don't have dissociative identity disorder, but what you have is this. I just got made fun of for crying. I will never cry again. I hate that part of me. I'm going to disconnect from that part of me. And you dissociate. And then you got punished for being fearful. And so you said, I'm never going to be afraid again. I am going to be hard, cold, dissociate. And so it starts. But dissociative identity is the person who's in severe abuse. And they disconnect totally from reality. and they can put themselves on a beach in the Bahamas, probably not a place they want to be today with a hurricane, but they can go to some place and just like nothing's happening to them. Or they can be on the ceiling in their mind, looking down as if it's happening to somebody else. And we're going to look at why that happens, because it's all about self-protection. But that's the severe end of complex trauma. There's one higher one, a psychopath. And I'm going to come to that in just a minute. Okay. So here's what I want you to understand. To deal properly with personality disorders, you got to deal with complex trauma. Just giving a person a pill for borderline personality doesn't work. And you want to know why many psychiatrists didn't like working with people with BPD? Because pills didn't help. And they didn't know what else to do. And so you have to deal with the complex trauma. But can you imagine a person with narcissistic personality who's cut off, their brain has closed the door and thrown away the key to their shame? Now you're telling a person with narcissistic personality disorder, if you want to get healthy, you got to face your shame. Well, thank you, sir, but no thank you. I won't be doing that. And so the point becomes this. The greater the complex trauma, the greater the personality disorder, the harder it is to deal with it. Because to deal with the most severe personality disorders means facing your shame, which is what your brain's been hiding and running from all your life. And so that's why they say there's not a lot of success for psychopaths. Because for them to face the depth of the shame they feel would feel like death. And they aren't going there. And that makes it very difficult. And so there's a lot of hard work, there's a lot of painful work for people with severe complex trauma to begin to face that deeply painful shame pot. And so we're going to be looking at that in more detail. So I just very quickly want to make this practical with our psychopath friend. Okay? And most of you know that. So I got to give you a brain picture here to show you what is going on. The limbic system is your emotion center in the brain. So when you are in complex trauma, you feel fear. That's your limbic system. And your limbic system, it makes decisions based on how it feels. So if it's afraid, it goes fight, flight, freeze. Don't think about it. Don't use the cerebral cortex and whale options. Act. So your limbic system, if you're in complex trauma, it gets very big and very powerful. And it keeps you stuck in making decisions based on how you feel. And the problem is that you in recovery can be building your cerebral cortex, which is your thinking part of your brain. And you can be learning new tools for coping and relating. But if your limbic system gets triggered, it will shut your cerebral cortex down. And it's like you forgot everything in 1 second that you've been learning for the last 2 years. That's how powerful it is. Now let me show you what happens in severe complex trauma. And this is just me trying to explain it in terms that I can understand. So when you have severe complex trauma, your limbic system is very big and very powerful. And what it does is it takes the thinking part of your brain, your cerebral cortex, and it splits it in two. One half can still think truth. One half can still be aware of reality. The other half gets hijacked by the limbic system, and it now gets used to distort truth, to twist reality. And that, most of you understand. And those two parts of your brain are in constant conflict, but when your limbic system gets triggered, the distorted part of your brain takes over. And you jump to worst case scenario, you go to crazy land, and that thinking part of your brain might as well go on a holiday because it ain't getting any attention. Okay, so let me take it now to the psychopath. So the psychopath comes out of the most severe complex trauma. So Kim and I have this little thing we do together that we enjoy, and that's called watching detective documentaries and forensic file type of things. But what's always an interest to me is you'll get a whole bunch of documentaries around a psychopath, different psychopaths, or serial killers. And you know what was always fascinating to me, and I just say, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. They tell you about the kid's childhood. And you want to know what every childhood of a psychopath is? Severe, severe abuse and abandonment. So what has to happen when you live in that kind of environment? Number one characteristic of a psychopath, they don't feel anything. You shut down emotions. You do not want to feel pain. You do not want to feel empathy. You do not want to feel guilt, because all of those things make you weak. And they make you vulnerable to getting picked on or hurt. So you take the part of you that is your emotional life and you close it right down. So a psychopath has no emotions, no conscience or remorse, and no empathy for anybody. That's because the trauma has been so severe, they had to shut it down. Next thing they have to do, they gotta lie about everything. Because if you tell the truth, you get punished. So you tell lie after lie after lie to get what you want, to get out of trouble, to not be accountable, and then you start believing your lies, and lies become how you think. Because you develop a belief deep down, if I'm honest with somebody, they'll reject me. If I'm honest with somebody, they'll never meet my needs. So everybody I meet, I gotta con. Everybody I meet, I gotta lie to get what I want. So lying takes over, and they believe it. Then, I cannot ever accept responsibility for my own behavior. So if I hurt somebody, I will twist it, I'll use that twisted part of my brain to say it's their fault. They had it coming. If they had done that, this wouldn't have happened. I will never own my part, because if I do, it'll be pain. And I can't go there. So total absolving himself of any responsibility. Complex trauma, severe. Then the shame at such a deep level, they get the narcissist qualities. Grandiose self-worth. They're better than everybody. All about me. That's all they can think about. That takes to the next thing. They do not know how to love anybody. They just know how to use people. And so their whole life is about using people. But their brain, they're smart. They distort and justify that they're using people, but in their minds, they justify it somehow. And then they got this brain that if it's triggered by trauma, they think they are just these cerebral beings with no emotion. But if their trauma gets triggered, this anger, this rage comes out of them. And what they're finding with psychopaths is they can't manage irritability. They can't manage impatience. They can't manage stress. And they can't manage sexual desire. All of those are emotions. They think they manage all of their emotions, but they just can't manage those ones. And that's because emotions, if triggered, are more powerful than the thinking part of their brain. So what I want you to see is a psychopath, and I'm not excusing them, I'm just explaining, a psychopath is what he is because of the depth of the pain they grew up with. That was their brain's way of surviving and coping. But can you imagine somebody that is shut down emotionally, with no conscience, no empathy, who doesn't have a clue how to love people, only to use people, with this self-aggrandizing thing that refuses to look honestly at himself, and let's say they come to Finding Freedom and react, and they say, I think my life's falling apart, and I say, well, let's look at your complex trauma. Let's look at your shame. They'd be out the door. Because that would be so difficult to do. And what I want to say to them, and I hope they would hear it, is you know what? It's going to feel like death, but it won't be for long. If you go through that and get honest, within a very short period of time, you're going to start to feel things that are positive you've never felt before. But most of them are afraid to take that risk. And so dealing with complex trauma and the personality stuff that comes out of that, I hope now makes sense to you. I hope it causes you to kind of realize, yes, this is a tough thing, and I'm going to be working on this for a long time because it can get triggered so deeply, but I hope you hear a little bit of hope. And as we go along, I hope we can give you tools for dealing with the stuff that you have to face in trying to get healthy from these things.